This is an episode about New Year's resolutions, but we're dropping it after January 1st. Why would we do that? Because y'all are quitters. We all are. We barely make it to January 9th. They consider the second weekend in January, the second Saturday in January, as Quitters Day because we have a really hard time sustaining those habits that we really thought were important in our life just 1 week earlier. So I sit down with JJ or Josiah Harling. He and I are friends. He wrote a book called Stride, where we talk about how do we sustain habits? How do we get that stride in our life so that something that we really think is important, we don't end 7 days later. So sit down and enjoy this episode of the Live Faith First podcast. January 9th, 2026 is Quitters Day, the day that about 80% of us stopped doing that New Year's resolution that we thought was going to transform our year. We were going to get healthy. We were going to stop a habit. We were going to start a habit. We were going to make something happen this year. And just about a week after we were sure that this year was going to be different, most of us resolved that this year isn't any different, but maybe it can be. Are there things that we can do to make it through January with our habits in place? Well, JJ Harling is here to help us this year. Maybe this next year will be a little bit different. JJ, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, man. Thanks so much for having me, Elliot. So fun to be brought into this podcast with you. We go way back. We got a lot of history, and it's just a blast to be jumping in this particular project with you.
Yeah, no, I'm stoked, and I can think of at least one story that we will tell today about a journey to a waterfall and the way I did
magical story,
Indonesian jungle, and the cross-cultural ministry that I was doing there. So anyway, that'll be a fun story. You do want to stick around for that. Before we get to that, though, JJ, give us the cliff notes of your life. Where were you born? Where were you raised? How did you get where you are today?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was actually born in Africa, born in Sudan. My dad was a pastor of a church there, so they were missionaries. And then we came back to the U.S. when I was really young. We bounced around to a lot of different churches all throughout the U.S. as Dad was pastoring, and got to see church world kind of from the front pew of whatever church Dad was preaching in. Saw the good, the bad, and plenty of ugly as well. But for the most part, it was a very positive experience. And then shortly after I graduated college, I started working in international ministry. So I've served in recruitment for a number of different missionary sending organizations, really helping the people of God find ways to connect with what He's doing all throughout the world, whether that looks like digging wells or planting churches or serving in hospitals or anti-trafficking work. It's my job to connect people who are here in the U.S. who say, God is burdening me to make an impact in the nations with opportunities to do so overseas. So I actually run an organization called Compel Global, where we get to do that. We represent many different sending organizations and ministries all over the world with their recruitment needs, so we can find the right opportunity for the right people.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. That's so good. And I hope we can jump into that a little bit later in the podcast, because I think that work is super important, but also really innovative. I don't know that there's many other organizations or any other organizations doing what you're doing there. So I love that. Now, we are going to be talking about New Year's resolutions and habits and so on. Give a 30,000 foot view of why are you and I talking about this today? What is it? What expertise might you have in this realm that people want to keep listening for?
Yeah, absolutely. I am a self-proclaimed lover of New Year's resolutions, and some that are very close to me are self-proclaimed haters of New Year's resolutions, and I love them dearly, right? And so all of us kind of struggle with this idea of forward growth. How do we actually make progress in our lives? I am a ICF trained coach. I coach people as a huge part of my vocation on really making next steps of forward growth and embracing a deeper level of calling in their lives. And then I actually wrote and released a book last fall on this subject, at least in part on this subject. It's called Stride, and we'll get into that in a little bit.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So since we're talking about habits and
Yeah.
New Year's resolutions, is there a habit, excuse me, is there a habit that you have struggled to establish? Like you kind of look back over, last few decades, you're like, every year I try to do this, or maybe you've given up on it. Is there one that it just hasn't taken hold for you? Which is a great way to start. I just wanted people to realize
it is. It's a great way to start.
You are human, JJ. You're not perfect
set,
at your
yes.
habits.
And
or maybe
so
you are.
Because this morning I went for a run, which was all against my better judgment. And I'm now at a standing desk where I'm talking to you, and chances are very high I'm going to fall over because my legs are going to give out. I'm not a runner at all. But that has been something that I've wanted to grow in just my physical health over the last 4 or 5 years. It always surfaces in New Year's resolutions, and so how do you actually get something to stick? Spoiler alert: I am not a marathon runner, nor will I be. But I think in that bite-sized kind of progress realm, yeah, we're seeing some progress, but I'm not anywhere close to where I want to be.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
That was going to be mine. The same,
Okay,
just
cool.
that physical exercise. It's
hard.
I'll get going and I'll have a good run of a month or 2 or 3, and then usually for me, it ends with some sort of illness. Like I'll just get the flu, get sick, and then like, oh, I'm not exercising while I'm feeling this way, which is probably good. Got to heal up. But when I'm better, I just am challenged to just re-engage that. And I think another one for me, we're going to talk about physical some, but we'll get into spiritual and all of that. But another one for me is my just what I eat.
Yeah.
I'm capable of my weight fluctuating in a given year, 20, 30 pounds, and gratefully in the last year, because I've been dedicated to paying attention to what I eat, it's been the downward cycle of weight, which I'm happy I'm finally, getting there. But like my history has been that, now I've reached my goal, and then slowly but surely I get back. And for me, I can get pre-diabetic. And so usually that's my motivation again, is like, dang it, there's those, A1C levels again, not where they need to be. And I'm not getting any younger. And so, let's, okay, fine. Here we go again.
Right. And I think everybody has their challenges, right? And whether it's physical or, like you said, in the area of spiritual rhythms, or even just the area of like time wasting, right? That's a huge issue for me. There are so many of those time wasters where, my response to the overwhelm of all the things I have to do is somehow weirdly procrastination on any of them, right?
Yes.
So it's a very natural thing that we all struggle with. Man, I am not approaching this conversation from a place of expertise, but rather as a co-commiserator who's learned a thing or two,
right.
and we'll just kind of approach it there.
Yes, and learn. We've learned from our mistakes, Lord willing, right? Let's dig in a little bit further, just about procrastination, because sometimes I feel like you do need a break. Like, dude, I could sit at my computer and I could have meetings 8, 10, 12 hours a day. But then there's that other side of it where, so there's kind of an out of whackness.
Right.
And then there's also the like, dude, you got to get stuff done. Like, get off your procrastinating butt and start work. And so how do you navigate that? Like, I want to keep a healthy, like, life pace, but also like recognizing that if, maybe procrastination is actually helpful for our, physical, mental health.
Right.
Maybe saying stupid things right now. So tell me if that's just the worst justification for procrastination ever.
Right. I think it's a good question. And maybe the issue isn't procrastination. I think that the word I'm focused on more than the word procrastination is the word presence. So for me, there is a place for rest, for taking a breather, for not working all the time, right? But the opposite of work is not procrastination. The opposite of work is rest. And I can be present, abundantly present in both my work and in my rest and in my family and in my, my own kind of spiritual journey. What does it look like for me to focus on presence there? Because oftentimes what happens in procrastination is that I'm just looking for mindless distraction. That's not present. I'm not actually present in Instagram while I also have the TV going. Right. I'm not present to anything. Right. But if I can kind of focus then on what does it look like for me to be present, even in scrolling Instagram, I'm going to set it for 10 minutes. I'm going to say, I'm going to look because I want to see particularly what are my friends doing? Did they post a picture of this trip that they took? Okay, great. Now I can be present in that. And that really is a better measurement, I think, rather than work or procrastination. It's, am I being present in whatever thing I'm doing?
I love that. That. That is super good. I can get quite present in my playing solitaire. My morning Wordle. So and I refuse to pay for the New York Times subscription, so I can't do more than one Wordle a day. That's all I get. So
well, that's good. And if you're present there for a period of time, that is okay.
That's okay. Yeah. Yes. So I think we can lean into procrastination. I know I find it when I'm about to step into like a bigger project that it's like, oh man, okay, just you got to sit down and work on it. I'm working on my master's degree. And so this week I had 2 papers due, and papers for me are always like the opening paragraph and the closing paragraph are the hardest. Yeah. Just because you kind of are trying to set what you're doing. And then of course you're trying to conclude it. And there were a few times this week where I'm like, dude, sit down, start writing. Like I just had to tell myself like enough. Absolutely. Because midnight is the deadline and it's getting closer to midnight by the moment. So start writing now. So question for you. When you give up a habit, that you still kind of want to have, and maybe it just kind of slips away. Maybe it's purposefully like, I got to take a break from this. Mentally or emotionally, do you struggle with that? Do you have kind of ways that have helped you, or does it like send you like, nah, dude, get back to it? Like, we will get into how to establish habits. In fact, this is my last question about not establishing a habit, but like, is there something, because we can move into the shame, we can move into the guilt. Oh, here I go again. Another year. I failed again. Do you try to tweak it? So I'm giving you all kinds of stuff, but what do you do when it's like, oh man, I don't think I can keep going with this habit anymore?
I think that's a great question, Elliot. When we get behind the habit and try to figure out what are we actually trying to accomplish and why, I think is a really important place to start, right? Because sometimes those habits that don't sustain me, I'm going to lift, 7 days a week, and I'm going to go all in, and I'm just going to crush it for a month. And on day, 8, I'm absolutely dead. And I start to fall off the wagon. I do tend to feel shameful, but I think if I look at my reasons for that habit, sometimes I can tease out some real unhealth that was behind that. Well, I compared myself to, my Marine best friend who is super jacked. And man, I need to kind of rest in the contentment of God hasn't designed me as my Marine best friend. He's designed me as me. Like, that might not be the narrative. That's right for my identity, right? What God wants is me to be healthy. He doesn't want me to be, the next Jack Ryan, right? And so, so I think that can be kind of a helpful clarifier to bring that back into perspective and say, was there a weird false narrative that I was subscribing into that was driving that habit? And then you can kind of use that to help clarify. So that's kind of what I would do when a habit starts to fall off. I'll kind of analyze what was behind this. And maybe it was a really good habit that just fell off. And then I'll remind myself that, the journey of maturity is a restart, right? So it is what I'm trying to develop is healthy rhythms in my life. It's not the destination of arriving at a place where my muscles are super big. No, I'm trying to develop the win for me is getting back on the horse when I've fallen off.
Yeah.
That's the win. And so to kind of set that as the short-sighted win, and that will empower the long-term win that I'm ultimately after.
Yeah. I think you bring up such an important point in that our motivation for a habit change, I think, is really important to establish.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to talk about, the last year and my eating choices.
Yeah.
On the days where, it's 7:30 at night and I love chocolate. So like for me, going and grabbing even some chocolate chips is enough. Right. But like a candy bar or something like that. For me, a reminder of like, okay, you've chosen to save your chocolate until Friday and Saturday nights, your two nights a week where you're like, okay, we can enjoy that because long-term health is more important than short-term enjoyment of.
Yeah.
And so, in those evenings where it's maybe tough to kind of make that choice, or you go to Burger King and do I get the fries? Do I get the fries? Do I get the meal deal, or do I just get the right? And it's like, no, I know that. And so for me, even having that foundation of like, I'm doing this for my, in this case, long-term health, whatever that is.
Right.
That also helps me kind of stay in it. Do you find that kind of going back and making sure that your like root, like motivations are still, you talk about them being the right ones, but like, do we have to re-up that? Like, is there something we should do like as we go kind of with a habit to kind of look at our root motivations again?
Totally. I would strongly encourage somebody to move beyond what do I want to accomplish to rather an I am statement. Who do I want to become? Right. And that is a really, really, really important difference. So do I want to, because what I become is something that I will be till the day I die. Right. So instead of, I want to run 3 miles in 24 minutes, right? Something I want to accomplish. Instead, what I want to become is I want to become someone who can, run, period. I want to become a runner. I want that to be true of my identity. Now, I'm using this as an example. I do not want to become a runner. Yes. But there is something about that statement about identity means I am always in process because I never arrive. Right. So then that is a constant pursuit that sustains me for the long term. Right. Even if I hit the goal of, 3 miles in 24 minutes, that's great. But does that mean that I am a runner? No, the runners I know are in their 80s and they're still going. Like, that's pretty cool. And that long-term sustainability side is something that we really want to be drawn to. And that's built around identity. Who are we becoming? And that's a long-term pursuit.
Yeah. And that even takes us, there's definitely the physical side of who we want to become.
Absolutely.
But it also takes us into the spiritual side and the emotional side and like these things. And maybe you can help me. Did you when we talk about New Year's resolutions, I've always kind of led into the physical ones. Okay, I'm going to eat better. I'm going to drink less. I'm going to, exercise, whatever it is. But, there's a whole, maybe as important or more important, other realms. Are there things that we should, how would you, if you're going into New Year's, how would you establish a goal? Or what are the things that you're like, okay, this year I'm going to focus on? Are there kind of a grid that we can kind of look at and this is what this year's goal maybe should look like because last year was, I experienced X, Y, and Z. So do you have anything around helping to kind of figure out what goal we want to do?
It's a great question. There's a book, I don't know, it's on my bookshelf somewhere back there. Oh yeah. It's written by Glenn Packiam. Is a friend of mine, has really had an impact in my life. And he wrote a book called The Intentional Year. And what the wisdom of that book, he talks a lot about the rule of life and looking at all the different sectors of our lives and beginning to make kind of growth goals. And he wouldn't necessarily frame it around like a New Year's resolution, but drawing attention to each of these different areas, right? There is most importantly, is there is that spiritual side, right? The vertical relationship, our standing before the Lord and our standing with the Lord, right? And we want to grow in intimacy and intentionality in our spiritual walk. Then there's looking at like the relationships that are most important to us and how do we, really prioritize that stuff. Then there's the vocational side, right, of our productivity in the world. What do we want to bring forth? And then even beyond that, you begin to look at things like other random goals or objectives. Hey, I want to travel more. I want to read more. Whatever those random goals are. But it's a really helpful book to begin to look at all those different facets of our lives. He advocates for taking a retreat at the beginning or the end of the year, beginning of the new year, that looks back at the year previously and how did we do? Me and my wife take a retreat. How did we do in 2025 in all these different areas? And then what sort of adjustments do we need to make in 2026? Maybe I'm traveling too much. We got to kind of look at that, and that becomes then a basis for what those goals, what New Year's resolutions we might come up with then, as far as our growth goals, because we're basing it on how we've done the year before.
Yeah. So setting goals to some degree takes some amount of reflection, is what
Absolutely. It's got to. Yeah.
Yeah. What are some things? So say we're establishing a goal. We've kind of done some of that reflection work. I don't know. Is there anything that you would add into that as far as like how we do reflection in a healthy way? You just mentioned a few domains, our spiritual life, our relational life, our vocational life. And then, I'm going to call them the fun stuff, but the traveling and whatever, and family and whatever. Right. Do you have anything you do to kind of help us like evaluate how you did with that? Or is it kind of a gut feeling of like, dude, we just did not spend enough time with family last year. Or like right out of Christmas, you're like, no, we spent more than enough time with family. Like, are there things that you do in that process to kind of help you figure out like, hey, this is one that I want to do. And then I'm going to ask a second question right now, because maybe you can answer it. Do you pick up a goal in each domain, or do you like, nah, this year is spiritual and I'm, the other stuff I think will flow out of that. And it's in a good enough place that I just want to focus on one domain in my life right now. So, how do you evaluate? And then I'm going to say, how do you pick? Like, do you pick one? Do you pick five? How does that work?
Sure. I would say the big question is first figure out, what are those different sectors of your life. I don't want to assume that everybody comes from a faith perspective, right? I do. And so, my walk with Jesus is the most important thing. And then my marriage, and then my kids, and then, so on and so forth, those concentric circles looking outward. So I think it's important to kind of lay all those out and then to ask the question, in the last year, how have I shown up in these, these relationships or in this sector? How have I shown up? And actually just honestly assess, what does my walk with Jesus look like? And not to say that we need to be measured or calculated in that, but just rather how have I shown up in that? How has it felt? Do I feel distant from the Lord? Do I feel a deep level of intimacy with the Lord? Right? These are some of the things we want to pay attention to. Do I, have I, looking back on the year, have I felt a deep, close connection with my bride? Or has it felt like we've been a little bit distant? Do I have a child that, I haven't spent as much time with, unfortunately, okay, that then begins to inform those priorities. And I think people would easily get burnt out and broken if they're making a goal in every one of those different sectors. So I would just pick one or two. You say, hey, I'm not going to drop the rhythms that I've established in all these different areas, but in 2026, I really want to focus on X. Yeah. So an example, that could come up is, hey, I'm continuing to be present in my spiritual walk and in my, my journey with my bride. But I know that in 2026, like, I really want to focus on, like, once every 2 weeks, I really want a one-on-one date with, with my son, or with both the boys or whatever. And so I think that can then move from a reflection to a rhythm you want to establish to a tangible goal that you want to work on in the next year.
Yeah. That's so good. Yeah, I appreciate the fact that you pick one, and I think that's part of our challenge is we are capable of finding issues in so many different realms of our life, because I don't know about you, but there's a certain, like, I think I can achieve, and I'm not, perfection overstates it, but I think I can get like really close to like having that one nailed. And without the long view that we're going to be on this earth for, Lord willing, the creek don't rise, for decades, right? We got time. And I saw an analogy once that I think speaks to what we talk a lot about balance. Like, how do we do work-life balance? How do we do balance in our life, and so on and so forth. And so I saw a speaker once, and he had, a stick.
Yeah.
And I'm going to pick up your book and use your book as an example here. All right. And then, normally this is what we think of. If you're watching this on YouTube, then this will make a lot of sense. But you have a fulcrum point, right? And as long as it's exactly in the middle, then, like, your work over here, your family over here, your spiritual life, like, everything is perfectly in balance. Mm-hmm. And then it's like, nothing better move, right? Like, we can't move, but nothing can go wrong. Right. And the reality is that one of your boys is, I don't know what ages they are, but they're going into 8th grade, and all of a sudden, like, their life is blown up by. And the truth is you're going to have to move that fulcrum over a little bit to be closer there, realizing that, maybe that means less time with your spouse. Maybe that means, I can't focus on work quite as much as I would like to right now. But I think part of that, as we set goals, is also to be aware of, like, what's coming up this year. What do I see, coming down the road? Yeah. Again, when you have kids the ages of your boys, you're like, okay, I don't see it yet, but I know that this is coming. So how do I either prepare for it or spend more time with them? So
that's exactly right. Absolutely. I think, it's I heard somebody talk about it, who works in the finance realm, and she said, it's not about finding the center point for balance, it's about reallocating the accounts. And that's something that you're constantly doing, right? Constantly moving, constantly pivoting, because life changes, right? And so to find in different seasons, I need to focus here, I need to focus there. And so that's where, kind of taking this at a year by year basis, again, there's nothing it's super important about, a New Year's resolution, but rather kind of a year by year inventory to say, where do I need to invest this year? And where, frankly, is not as high on my list of potential investments, because that begins to inform choices. And that's really important.
Yeah. And at that point, we're living a life that we're actually evaluating. They were actually taking a time to sit back and I would grade myself. I'd give me like an A to an F, but whatever scale you want, right? Like, I don't know, enough school. That just seems like a fair way to go about it. But however it is, now we actually have a life that's evaluated. And I think out of that, when you talk about the kind of the motivation we have for sustaining habits, we can kind of go back to that and go, hey, this is part of the reason we're going to keep doing this habit, is because we've identified that our spiritual life, relational life, whatever that is, physical life, is not where we want it to be. And so I need to sustain because of that. But like you brought up at the beginning, understanding our motivation,
right,
makes such a big difference there. What are some things we can do to sustain habits? What are things we've talked about? Motivation, like going back and realizing that. Are there any other things, kind of tips, hints, practical things that have helped you or that you've seen help other people just to sustain a habit?
Yeah. Well, so I know, we'll get into the book, but the book is called Stride. And it really is all about helping people unpack the next step of their vocational journey, their truest sense of calling or purpose in their lives. And it follows an acronym, STRIDE. And the E actually stands for endurance, right? And so I want to kind of start there, actually, because in that theme of endurance, most of us really approach life from a sprint mentality. Right? If it's going to happen, it's going to happen now. And if it doesn't happen now, it must not ever be supposed to happen. That's the mindset that most of us bring to the table, right? And we see it everywhere. We see it in our careers. We see it in our exercise goals. If I don't see results, in the next 3 weeks, I'm out. It obviously didn't work. Right. And I think we are so short-sighted, and even in the church world, we're a little short-sighted. We worship a meteoric rise. The fastest-growing churches in America. Like, wow! If my church isn't that, then maybe I'm not actually getting the job done, right? And we compare and contrast. I think we need to reframe the definition of success around the idea of a long obedience in the same direction. Like, that's the goal. It's not what are you accomplishing. It's, at the end of your life, am I going to look back and say, I walked a long obedience in the same direction? Faithfulness is the goal, and consistency is the goal, right? So then what do you do to sustain those, that endurance over the long haul? And I would say, it really is about sustained bite-sized progress, right? Baby steps. That seems so simple, but it's really, really, really important, right? You've got to just be seeing that small incremental growth, right? Number 2 would be sustained focus, because the primary strategy of the enemy is distraction, right? So that's where, it's not that there's anything inherently wrong with social media, but if I know I have a tendency for distraction, I sure better set a limit on social media, because it's keeping my focus away from where my focus needs to be, right? And I need to just do anything I can to dial in that sustained long-term focus in whatever the goal is that I'm laying out. And then the last one is sustained hope. Gotta have some sort of sustaining hope. And so I think that's where you surround yourself with others who have, who are further in the journey of the particular growth area that you're looking for. And you say, man, what is your life like now? What are you doing? You're filling up your vision for once I establish this as a rhythm in my life, here's what my life is going to look like. You've got to have that sustaining focus, that sustaining progress, and then that sustaining hope.
Yeah, I love that. That's so good. I think one of the things that helps me a little bit too is celebrate the small victories. I mean, I appreciate that you kind of like that. We got to do this incrementally. Like you say, your example of I want to become yoked in January, so I'm going to lift 7 days a week. And the realization is, one, you're I don't know if you said he was a Marine, but your buddy who's yoked, right? Like, okay, so first off, he was built that way. I'm sorry, God did not.
Totally,
he did not give me like the base ingredients to be yoked. That's just not. Didn't get it. So I can't compare myself to him or to somebody else, right? And so I have to be comfortable in who I am and how God's created me and how He's built me. And I love that you bring up that, like, we compare ourselves so much, and so if our motivation for our habit that we're trying to establish is so that I can be like them or be like that. I think we want to go back and look at that. Is that the right motivation? And is that enough to sustain you? Because at some point you realize the hard work that went in to get that person there. And you're like, I don't even want to work that hard. So is that the right,
and that's
is that the right
that's
place
where I
to start?
go back to the statement I made at the beginning about the type of person that I want to be. Right. I may never have, the protein shake body that a lot of gym superheroes have, right? That's not the goal.
Right.
My goal is to be a person of discipline. That's something that I can work towards for the rest of my life, right? I want it to be said of me that I'm a man of discipline. Okay. Well, then I'm going to establish the rhythms to make that true of myself. And it just so happens to be fleshed out at the gym sometimes, you know? So, yeah.
That's good. How can we integrate spiritual practices into sustaining habits? So we can talk a little bit about how we cultivate spiritual habits, but like, are there practices that help us with these domains that we've talked about, our relational domains, our career domains, and those types of things? How do we kind of infuse spiritual practices into maybe some of those domains?
Yeah, it's a great question. You know, the best example I can think of is my son, Joshua. Joshua is a soccer player. He loves playing soccer. He's a competitive soccer player. He's 13 years old, and a couple of years ago, he was on a team and he was kind of intimidated about joining into this new team. He was trying out for it. And so, we were trying to help him, and he does so much comparing. Well, this player did this, or this guy can do this trick, and I goofed up. I missed the penalty kick. Like, oh, I'm the worst. And he just gets in his head. And so I was trying to think, how could I spiritually speak into this? And I said, Josh, we're gonna memorize a little rhyme, that you're gonna just rehearse as a prayer every time you go step onto the pitch. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head because it was just in there, but it essentially said, nothing to earn, nothing to prove, loved if I win, loved if I lose. And that was that 4 lines, and then there was another 4 lines. But what it did is it regrounded every single time he stepped onto the pitch, right? Something that is spiritually true about himself. Nothing to earn, right? I can't earn any additional favor. I can't earn anything, any additional proudness from dad or mom. I'm not trying to impress anybody. Nothing to earn, nothing to prove, right? Loved if I win, loved if I lose. And just this mentality that claiming spiritual truths over our habits in a weird way helps to sustain our habits. And I can't explain how that makes sense, but he was willing to work at it over and over and over again because he knew something that was more important that was true about him. And I don't know how to unpack that, but it's such a powerful truth.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, then immediately it takes the pressure down. Because even as you were saying those 4 lines, you're like, okay, wait a second. My parents won't love me less. My coach might, not like what I did, but whatever. God doesn't love me less.
Right.
But I'm still going to go out and give it all I got. And I think that's,
and it gives the freedom to go out and try. And I think that's what's important about rehearsing those spiritual truths is if we know we're safe, then all of a sudden it gives us freedom to explore and experiment, right? And to actually try something, right? It's the same thing, and to use the analogy of exercise, right? If I know I have the unconditional love and acceptance of my spouse, right? That's my safe space. Well, sure, I can go out and try, I can give it my all. I can go for a run. Gosh, I hate running. Maybe I need to try biking, right? But I can go and experiment because I'm grounded somewhere else. Yeah. And my performance out there does not dictate whether I am loved or accepted back home.
Yeah. I love that. It was interesting. I interviewed at a church a while ago now, 10, 12 years ago. And cool. They wanted to do church growth. And so they said, well, where would you start? And I said, well, let me start by saying I didn't get the job because I'm not sure they like this answer, but I'm like, actually, I would start by gathering people to pray. Like we need to gather people to pray. Cool. And when we do that, I out of that, I think, we'll get the strategies, and out of that, I think God will give us the favor to help the church grow. Like I said, I don't think they like the answer, but anyway, my point is still like, even, bringing God into our habits. He does care about your physical health. He does care about your relational health. He cares about your relationship with him. So, I mean, there's so many things that even to just say, Lord, I don't feel like working out today, Lord.
Right.
But I'm also knowing that you have put on my heart that I need to be a person that of commitment, or I'm a person that keeps their word, or whatever. Would you help me today? And even in that, that idea of like, just this, again, there's something that happens when we just kind of bring God into it and admit to him where we're at,
Totally.
Lord, I don't feel like running today. Lord, I feel like eating cake today. Lord, I don't want to hang out with my 8th grade son because you know what? He's a pain in my tail. Like he's actually kind of annoying me right now. And but Lord, you've made me his dad. So here I go.
I
give it a great time.
I think there's a really important place for having a picture in mind of the end goal, right? So we've talked a lot about how it's not destination, and I still agree with that. But it helps to have a picture, right? When I am 80, and my boy is in his mid 50s or whatever, I want him to want to hang out with me, right? So what am I going to do now to bring that to fruition?
Right.
When I'm 60 and he's playing with his son soccer at the park, I want to be able to join that game, right? Okay, well, I better do something. I can't just sit on the couch all day because that won't be aligned to this long-term vision that I have of what I want. Right. And so I think kind of pays to flesh out a little bit, like what's the vision that'll be there, and then the counter to that, what's the vision that won't be there if I don't take action, or what's the picture of the consequence? I guess that's what I'm saying. If I don't take action, So that's kind of an ugly thing to envision, but I think it's important to have that in there to paint that picture of heaven and hell, and that helps you decide kind of, okay, what are my actions going to be?
Yeah. No, this will probably show my pettiness, but like I observe people walking, and I see people who, and I don't know their stories. I'm just meet people watching, but like looking like they're really struggling walking, and they have a walker, they have a cane, they have something like that, and I will say like, no, I need to keep moving, because it's my goal that when I don't know how they are, but my best guess, when I'm that age, I'd like to be able to walk by myself. Now, here's an amazing story. I was sitting on a balcony in a hotel room, and a couple walks by, gray hair. They were dressed to the T. They were walking like they had it. And I don't know their age, but they looked to me 70s, 80s. And like, dude, and they walked by, and I'm like, oh man, when I am their age, I want to walk like that. I want to look like that. Like I want to like look like, dude, I'm not slouching. I'm out for a night on the town. Like I'm like right there. I want that. And 5 minutes later, another couple walks by the other direction, and the guy he's walking his dog with one hand, and he has a cane in the other hand. And so he's not struggling. He's still got good pace, but he's got a cane. I'm like, oh man, like I hope I don't have a cane when I'm that age, right? And then it was amazing. His dog, like on the leash, walked behind him, and then started walking the other direction. And this guy, I kid you not, did a full pirouette in the middle of the street. Like he just, and then just kept on walking. I'm like, but if I do have a cane, I want to be able to do that.
Right.
Like I want to be able to pirouette with my dog, start messing with me.
That's great.
And so anyway, I love the picture there though, right? Of like, no, this is where I want to be. And I know in order to do that, I have to keep walking, moving, and we're picking on physical things right now, but as an example of like, those are goals that I want us to be able to get around. So
yeah. Totally.
Okay, let's go back to just kind of establishing New Year's resolutions. Is the problem that we pick too many? Like, we go too hard? Like, what are the things, the pitfalls that we should avoid? We kind of got this base of motivation, and then we're
Yeah.
rah out of our base of motivation, and then
Yeah.
it's time to implement, and then January 6th or 8th or whatever the day this year
Yeah.
is comes by, and we're giving up. So what are some of the pitfalls that we can avoid?
I mean, any sort of goal, whether it's New Year's resolution or not, I think, if it's not attainable, it's going to be dead in the water, right? And we specialize in creating non-attainable goals, but that's so discouraging come January 9th when it's like, well, that didn't work. Well, yeah, of course it didn't work. You said you wanted to fly, like,
Right.
what do you mean, but I think people sometimes we set these goals that are irrelevant to who we are, and they're often based in comparison, right? I want to look like that guy. Well, that guy owns a gym and he trains in it 8 hours a day, and he's been doing that for 20 years. Like,
Right.
that is not a realistic goal. Sorry. So I think making goals realistic is a real big thing. In light of your current circumstances, hey, you're working 10 hours a day right now. You have 2 kids. Like, you're not going to be able to spend 2 hours a day at the gym. It's not a reality.
Right.
But
you might be able to take a 20-minute break at work,
of course,
and go for a walk around your building, or get out of the house, or get home and take the dog. Right. So
exactly.
2 hours at the gym may not happen, but how do we scope it?
Yeah. And it doesn't mean you don't set a goal, right? It just means you set a goal that is attainable. I love that.
Yeah.
So I think that kind of can be a key. I would caution against having too many. I think that just gets a little crazy and a little dizzying if you try too many.
Yeah.
How
do you set good goals? How do you scope it out like that so that you actually make realistic, attainable goals? Do you have some formula that you use around that?
Yeah. What's the parameters, like SMART goals, right? So are they measurable? Are they attainable? Are they realistic? Are they time bound? I can't remember what the S is right off the top of my head. But like, that's a common framework, but I do think it's helpful to look at that and say, okay, are these goals that I'm throwing out there appropriate? And you'll see a much higher degree of success if they are specific. That's the S, right? So are they specific? And so instead of just saying, well, I want to get, again, using health as the example, I want to get healthy this year. No. What does it look like to get a little bit more specific than that? And then to actually make it measurable so you can track it, and then actually make it attainable so it fits into your rhythms, and actually make it realistic, right? Which goes right along with that, and then make it time bound, right? So how will I actually check in 3 months down the road? Who is holding me accountable in these areas? Who am I going to report back to and say, hey, here's how I'm doing in this, or a month down the road? So I think that can be a helpful framework to make it a good goal.
Yeah, I like that. I love that. We tend to like to call it a New Year's resolution. Obviously, it's New Year's, and so we find that the calendar is switching over.
Yeah.
Personally, I actually like September better.
Nice.
I don't know. Yeah. Winter weather's kind of like
brutal.
So right. So like, can I, if my thing is like, I want to go out running. Well, like, you live in Colorado, like, okay, am I going to go out in the snow? Like, is that realistic versus maybe if exercise or something, wait till spring, wait till, the weather is actually in a place where now you can establish spring into summer and into fall. And so now you actually have a good runway for some of those things. Now, obviously, if you're going to the gym, that's different. But for me, September always felt great. One, it was the start of a school year.
Yeah.
And so kind of there was this natural, especially when we had, when Annika was in school, living in our home, summer's kind of also been a time for me where like, I just kind of give up on a few things. And it's like, okay, it's reset time. Like vacations are
Yeah.
over,
Right.
normal rhythms back
Back
at
to
work, and we got commute, whatever, looking right. And so for me, as much as we do New Year's resolutions, and hey, everybody, I'm not trying to give you an excuse to wait till September. On the other hand,
Sure.
I think we get so caught up in like, well, I'm New Year's, that has to be the one, or even when we look at our habits, we still tend to sit in kind of this agrarian framework where farmers every day have to do the same thing.
Right.
If you have a dairy farm, you get up early, you milk the cows, you get the cow, all the work. I'm not a dairy farmer, so I can't tell you all the things you do.
Right.
But I know you get up early and you go to bed late and you do it again the next day.
Right.
And most of us don't work in agriculture anymore. And so for me to have this, like I need to, do my devotions for 45 minutes, 7 days a week. That's great. But reality might be, well, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I'm getting up early and going to work. So maybe I can get 20 minutes in, but Saturday, on the other hand,
sure, I
could carve out an hour. Or Sunday, I can carve out, right? And so even as we look at how we schedule what we're trying to do, to be realistic about what is your life rhythms actually like? And it doesn't have to be by the day. We can actually look at it. No, I'm going to do this quarterly. I'm going to do this monthly. I'm going to do this every weekend. I'm going to do this every other, and kind of be able to have flexibility with how we're, living out our habits. And it doesn't have to be this 20 minutes every day, always, because that's may not be reasonable for what your actual life schedule looks like.
Totally. I completely agree with that.
Do you have any, we're recording this before Thanksgiving, so I am going to put you on the spot. Do you have any things you're thinking about working on in the new year yet? Have you even started, or has life been too crazy? Like that's after Christmas, before New Year's. That's when I figured that out.
It's been pretty crazy. And in fact, just this morning, not because we were planning on this conversation, just in my prayer time this morning, in my Bible reading time this morning, I was actually thinking about the New Year's goals that I set last year, and was like, man, I have 1.5 more months to accomplish something that I did set that was an accomplishment goal. Oh man, can I get it done? And I've made a lot of progress in it. But I really wanted to actually check it off the list this year. And so it's like, man, I don't know. Got 6 weeks. Let's see.
All right. Yeah, that's it. That's really interesting that you would bring that up, because when I look back to last January, I definitely had a set of goals. And honestly, February, there was kind of a rework of life circumstances. And so that one that I had said, no, we can do that this year. It was started. It was not completed. And maybe it will someday. Maybe it won't. I don't know.
Right.
But, also there's other goals that I've very much been able to keep on track with.
Right.
So,
right.
All right. Should we tell them the waterfall story?
Sure. Let's do it.
So the first time we met was in Indonesia, right? Was that the first time we met?
It was not the first time we've met. There had to have been some context before.
Right?
I mean, please.
I don't know.
You're
what
right,
I do
not.
know is that we arrived in Indonesia, and you and I were sharing a room, and I think we were sleeping on a mat on the floor.
Yeah. I mean, it was as rustic as it gets, for sure. For sure.
And then, so the goal of the goal of this trip was to show a number of us different regions of Indonesia, and also to demonstrate one of the ways of reaching people for Jesus is to just go in and essentially build relationship, and look for ways to have spiritual conversations, but not in a, let me put a track in your hand, not in a way of let me preach at you, but more. Right. So
and it was interesting, just to interrupt real quick. So the workers who were there and it's a higher security kind of location, right? So we're going to name them, but they were there, and they had been praying about 3 different islands, and they were trying to figure out where should we start a church planting discipleship work on these 3 islands. So what they actually did is they brought in this group of the 2 of us and about 6 other folks, and they said, hey, we want you to come and pray with us and figure out where is God opening the door for our future, for the future ministry impact. Which, by the way, if you're listening to this podcast and you're in the mission space, what better way to engage your supporters and your churches? Like, incredible. It was an incredible trip.
Yeah, it really was. And such a fun group of people.
Oh, yeah.
So we get on a boat and we just start going.
Yep.
And you're passing by islands, and they're these beautiful, like, palm treed, blue water. I mean, it's the South Pacific. It's absolutely gorgeous. But like, we just felt like getting just further. I mean, we were getting further and further away, but like, we were
out
just
there, man.
Keep going, and you go and you go and you go.
Well,
and
on that ferry, I looked down. It was hot as anything, and it was loud, diesel smoke everywhere. I looked down, and there's like cockroaches all over the boat. I mean, it was disgusting.
It was.
So it was a serene location, but a really nasty boat situation. Yeah.
No, and that was one of the jankier boats that we went on. We went on a couple boats on that trip, and that was by far we made it and back. So we'll just say that.
We did.
So we get to this island, and there's no dock. So they get you kind of as close to the water as you can get, and they put out this like bamboo stick plank.
You got to share the fact that we were there. We were by far and away the 2 youngest people on this team. And most of the individuals that were there were in their 60s plus and had their bags. And so we were, the boat stopped about 200 yards from shore. And we're like, what's going to happen? Are we supposed to swim? We've got all of our bags. And these villagers, Lord bless them, they grabbed a bamboo raft and paddled out to us, and all of us dutifully climbed out of the ferry with all of our luggage and all of our camera bags and everything else, and climbed out of this raft. And meanwhile, I was thinking, like, the second I get home, I'm going to be fired. Like, this is a disaster. And then the ferry sailed off into the great unknown, and we were on our own, man. Yeah.
We were just there. There. And so we did have a host. Like, there was a person on that island who our host had made contact with. So we did. And he was, as I recall, he was the ESOT of the local mosque, which is in church terms equivalent to a pastor. So a pastor of the church, except it's an ESOT of a mosque. And so we were staying in his home, which was really, 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 really cool for him to be hosting.
Opportunity. Yeah.
However many of us, 10 of us North Americans, walked us around his town. And these towns are great, man. They're like built over water. Like, so you're walking on these, like, I'm going to call them bridges, but they're more like sidewalks on stilts. Yeah. And then their houses are on, out on stilts. And so it was, again, surreal just to kind of be wandering around this community, which is built over water.
Yeah. Incredible. So then then we're spending time in these different homes, and we're talking about, honestly, we're talking about things of faith. I mean, even in the host home, we ended up talking about Jesus and talking about Isa, which is, another name for Jesus, but how Jesus shows up in the Quran, right? Incredible conversations. Yes. And then they say, hey, we want to take you on a hike. We want to go explore this waterfall. So sure, we're game for a hike, this relationship building. So we start going, and
we do ask how far it is. We do ask how far it is.
Yeah, they're like, oh, it's just like an hour, like super short. Yeah.
It's close. It's close.
It's close.
Now, also, let's.
How many
do you remember what shoes?
How many hours later did we arrive at the waterfall?
Oh, it had to be 2.
Oh,
I mean, sun was going down.
It was crazy.
And what shoes were you wearing? What kind of shoes were you wearing?
And the guy's this machete, and I'm like, oh, what's the machete for? He's like, oh yeah, it's for all the snakes that we're walking past.
Folks, do not picture like roads with sidewalks. We were walking on like thin,
hacking our way
narrow, like dirt path, and What shoes were you wearing? I had like Huarache sandals on.
Yeah, I was wearing flip-flops for sure.
Okay,
For
right.
sure.
Because the waterfalls were close.
Yeah.
So like it's close.
Yeah.
Oh, and also we had our host's dad was with us as well.
That's
and
right. I forgot about that.
he was mid to deep 70s.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Okay.
Oh,
so
yeah. All right. Oh yeah. So it's like a million degrees. We finally get to the waterfall, and and then they're like, "Okay, we're gonna turn around." And Elliot and I are like, "No, we're not. Like, we've got to get in the water. We're dying.
Yes.
Dying."
2/3 of the group went back. At the end, it was you and me and and the older gentleman, the oldest gentleman, right. And who was by far. I mean, he might have been more physically fit than you and me.
Right.
I mean, he wasn't complaining. So it was the three of us left, as I recall. There might have been one more. So if I'm leaving somebody out, I apologize. But it was the three of us left. Everybody went back because blisters on their feet, hot and humid. The sun was going down. I remember one person was having, I don't know, it was hip issues or knee issues. I mean, there was some other physical something. So the falls were beautiful.
Yeah.
And we take our pants, we strip down to our chonies, to our underwear, hop in. And it's refreshing. I mean, that was lovely.
Super
right?
Good. Yeah.
Go under the waterfall. It's taking your breath away because just the water, and it's gorgeous. So absolutely worth the however many hours it took us. And there's a big rock. Kind of a platform rock right next to the pool and of the falls.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember my thinking at the time was like, okay, that was a long walk here.
Yeah.
It's not getting shorter on the way back.
Nope.
And me walking for 2 hours with wet chonies is going to leave some nasty chafing.
Not a good idea. Right. And you have to wear pants in this culture because that's what you do. You're not wearing shorts. Right.
Right.
Yeah. So we made an informed decision to change behind a rock. Right. And put some pants back on. We turn around just in time to see somebody filming us.
Yeah, it was a flip phone, as I recall. They had their flip phone out, and they're like, "Look at all of it! I have never seen behind this white." Like, and we were trying to be quick and sly. Like, we weren't like
we were hey, neither everybody. Of those things apparently.
No, we were not. And there's a couple of white booties somewhere. Yep. There's proof, way deep, and. Yeah. So
super fun trip.
If Instagram had been out back then, I guarantee we would have been able to find ourselves. We would have been able to find ourselves. We were like
100%. The guy was cracking up laughing. It was great. So.
Oh yeah. Oh dude, he's still having fun with that video. I mean, he's still telling stories. Do you remember that one time? Do you remember the dinner that night back at that dude's house? The Esat's house. Do you recall that at all? I'm
trying to think. What was it?
So it was a spread of fresh fish.
Yeah.
And of course you're on an island, right? So, I mean, he's just going down to the shore and whatever came in that day.
Yeah.
And I just recall they had grilled squid, calamari.
Yeah.
I remember looking at it going, I'm going to try it because I do like calamari, but I was expecting it to be chewy.
Yeah.
And, like most of our fried calamari here. And again, it's barbecued. Like he grilled it over and it was the most tender, flavorful. Like
awesome.
I that one piece of that meal. And then they had this like sweet sauce, something.
Yeah.
Coconutty.
I do remember that.
I don't know. Anyway, all like that dinner though was like of all of the places I've traveled, that place actually was one of the highlight dinners. And I'm happy that he fed me. After dropping trout at the falls.
Too. Well, I don't remember much of that night, of that dinner. And the reason why is this is a true story, but I actually got fire ants in my pants, which is not something that I recommend to anybody.
No, not a healthy choice.
So I think I blocked a lot of that night out. That was rough. It was a rough one. But so here's the cool thing about that whole trip, though, at a spiritual level. Months after we came back, I remember getting a text from our worker there, and it was a picture. And it was a picture of the first baptized believer from that island that we had gone and visited and said, this is the spot for the next church planting movement. So cool. Has nothing to do with New Year's resolutions or anything. Just how incredible is that? A tribe that had never heard the name before. And spiritual transformation.
And how God can use our feeble attempts and
shortcomings. Yep.
And still do his work. Just I want to say despite us sometimes.
Oh yeah.
So
absolutely.
That was super
I led
good.
a podcast for a while. It was called The Flop. And it was all about getting leaders to talk about their greatest flops, failures, and embarrassing moments and how God has used them for impact. Frankly, I could have told all the stories, but we wanted other leaders to come in on the podcast and be able to share. But it is a core foundational belief that I have is that God, in his mastery, he uses those moments to move his agenda forward. And it's just the coolest thing to be invited into. So, incredible.
I love that. Since we're here, would you give us cliff notes of Compel Global? You gave us a little bit up front, but would you just kind of give us the cliff notes as we start to wind down this the recording?
Absolutely. Here? Yeah. So we are, as I said, we are a mobilization organization. And what that means, I've been in missions mobilization work for 20 years, and I was always working for like one organization at a time. I would meet a lot of people who were a fit for missions, long-term missions. They just didn't fit the unique organization I was working with. They, weren't theologically conservative enough for that agency. Or they were a fit for missions, but they didn't want to go to the, 2 countries we could place them with a different agency. And so eventually I kind of realized, what if we flipped that model on its head? And what if we could function like the eHarmony in the world of global missions, where we recruit for many different ministries all over the world, and then coach and guide people through the discernment journey to find where they fit. Would that be a thing? So it actually has never existed before. The model, the way that we're doing it, really hasn't been a thing in the space. And we started that 4 years ago, and it's just kind of exploded. And God's used it in really powerful, profound ways.
That's so good.
And it's not just, the traditional missionary kind of narrative that people think of, a church planter who's going to a third world country, to do evangelism. I mean, it's everything from, I was talking to a surgeon yesterday that we're placing in probably in a hospital in the Middle East, first world context, very high paying, career role. We have others that are in the business mission space that we're helping. We have others that are in anti-trafficking work or in, literally there are places on this planet that still do not have clean water. So we have engineers that we're placing in digging wells all over the world. So my conviction, and this actually does tie to the book, to Stride, is that my conviction actually comes from Exodus chapter 4, where Moses is at the burning bush. And he's, God's revealing this big plan for him. And Moses is like, God, I'm not the guy. I don't want to do this. This isn't my thing. And God does the most curious thing. He asks Moses, he says, hey, what's in your hand? What's in your hand? And for Moses, it's a staff. Well, the staff represents some stuff. It represents professional skills. It represents his story that he's walked, that's brought him all the way here. It even represents some pains that are in his past. Right? It represents a lot of stuff. And God invites him to throw that down for the sake of God's purposes in the planet. And I think there's an invitation to stewardship there. So my conviction is everyone that I'm coaching, I'm asking, hey, what's in your hand? What are all the things in your hand? Your professional skill sets, your background, your experiences, your passions, your gifts, your spiritual gifts, even your pains. What does it look like to steward all of that for the sake of God's glory somewhere overseas? That can lead into some really exciting conversations. So
I love that.
That's what I do.
That's so good. That's so good. Thanks for sharing that. All right, here's my final question for the day. Yeah. What is exciting you right now? What's one thing in your life? It could be a Bible verse, a scripture passage, something happened with your kids, something with work. Is there something right now when you think about it, it just makes you smile?
Yeah, absolutely. Honestly, there's a lot of really, really cool things that are happening, but um, I've really focused this year. Oftentimes, I'll do like a word for the year and a theme for the year, and it really has been the theme of contentment. And in a weird way, that sounds so boring. That's not excitement, that's not exciting. And yet it is, it's wildly fulfilling, right? Because then when new opportunities come, I'm not striving for anything great.
Yeah.
It's like, sweet God, you brought this opportunity in my lap. I'll take it, but I don't need it. I don't need it to fulfill something in me. I'm content with who you've made me to be. And I feel like that has been a really cool theme that God has kind of brought forth this year. And frankly, I'm excited about that.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Well, Josiah, I don't think I've ever called you Josiah.
No, so you have not.
I'm going to call you JJ again. JJ, thanks so much for being part of the podcast, man. I am so stoked you got to be on the Live Faith First podcast. So thanks for being here.
Absolutely. Yeah, my pleasure, man. All right. Take care, bro.
All right. Everybody out there, let's go live faith first. All right. You're still there. It's great to see y'all. That means you enjoyed the conversation with JJ. That was so much fun. And yes, I've known JJ for a while, so that actually even makes it more fun for me as the host to have a friend on the other side. Here's the one thing I'd like to know from you. What is your New Year's resolution? I know it's going to be an easy one for you. What are you going to do this year? What's the one thing that you really want to accomplish this year and make it past January 9th, right? So think of that thing and make it something that is not comparative. Like, oh, I want to be that person. No, how did God create you? What do you have in your hand that God wants you to work on this year? All right, everybody, let's go live faith first.